Hey everyone. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the controversy involving Bruce Lee's daughter, Shannon Lee, and Quentin Tarantino over Quentin's movie Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Now, amazingly, Shannon was able to get China's National Film Administration to cancel the release of the film in China until Quentin edited the scenes containing Bruce Lee, who was portrayed by Mike Moh, who I thought did a pretty halfway decent job. He had the mannerisms down, his voice was pretty spot on. But Quentin in turn said he would not recut the film, so I guess it'll never be released in China. Now, before this, after the film's release in August of 2019, Shannon blasted Tarantino's take on Bruce Lee, saying, "He comes across as an arrogant asshole who was full of hot air, and he's the one with all the puffery, and he's the one challenging Brad Pitt, which is not how he was." Shannon went on to say that this portrayal made my father into this arrogant punching bag. When Quentin Tarantino defended his portrayal, saying, "Bruce Lee was kind of an arrogant guy. I didn't just make a lot of that up," Shannon said he could shut up about it. That would be really nice. She went on to assert that her father was not the fight-picking antagonist shown in the scene, saying, "People said he was cocky and arrogant when really he was confident and skilled." Bruce's former students, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and Dan Inosanto, also weighed in, with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar saying that Quentin's take on Bruce was sloppy and somewhat racist, and Dan Inosanto stating he was never, in my opinion, cocky. It's interesting Dan should say that because he did say this.
The Bruce Lee at that time period might be a little bit on the cocky side.
But not to take Guru Inosanto out of context, he went on to say, maybe he was cocky in as far as martial arts because he was very sure of himself. He was worlds ahead of everyone else, but on a set, he's not going to show off. Now, I think this is true to a certain degree. Bruce's ultimate aim was to become a film star here in the US. So when it came to American actors, writers, and directors, he was friendly and liked to party, passing around joints. Most of these Hollywood celebs were not familiar with Chinese martial arts or culture, so Bruce was a very fascinating guy to them with his Taoist, sage-like advice. But generally, I think Quentin got it right when he said that Bruce was kind of an arrogant guy. This was said by many people who knew him personally. And while I think it's difficult where you draw the line between confidence and egotism, especially when somebody isn't totally over the top with their bragging and trash talking, I tend to think Bruce was a bit of a braggart who wanted to be the center of attention, at least around other martial artists and stuntmen. I wouldn't say he was as bad as many current MMA stars or athletes, but when it came to especially other martial artists, he could be an egomaniac. Really, all you have to do is observe the way he acted in any one of his interviews, movies, or TV roles to see that he's quite sure of himself. But there are many other examples of Bruce Lee's egotism. Buddies of his in Hong Kong, like Michael Lai, said he had nga tsat, which is to say he was very cheeky and strutted like a peacock. He always acted very superior. James Coburn said he was cocky. Chuck Norris said he was a very ego guy and that he liked to tell people how good he was. Bruce Lee himself said things like, "If I tell you I'm good, you'll say that I'm boasting, but if I tell you I'm not good, you'll know I'm lying. And to tell the truth, I could beat anybody in the world." As soon as he moved to Oakland, California in the early 60s, he angered some traditional martial artists at a luau held by Wally J. Bruce lectured them about how their styles were inferior to his modified Wing Chun. When his friend Jimmy Lee had a falling out with Master T.Y. Wong, Bruce published a book titled Chinese Kung Fu, in which he laid out in pictures how his system was superior to T.Y. Wong's, quote, slower, half-cultivated style. Before he fought Wong Jack Man, he put out an open challenge at a show in Chinatown after punching one of Sifu Bing Chan's students. Sifu Wong told me that before they fought, Bruce was yelling and cursing at him. In reference to David Chin, who set up what was supposed to be a sparring match, Bruce said to Wong, "You've been killed by your friend." At Ed Parker's tournament, where Bruce was once again maintaining that karate was inferior, Kenpo master Dave Hebler said that Bruce was considered to be a bit of an arrogant prick. Master James Wing Woo has a story about how he and Bruce got into it in the offices of Black Belt magazine. After James called Bruce's art BS Do and told him he should stick with Wing Chun, Bruce kept insisting that he get up and show him what he can do. James told him that if he got up out of his chair, only one of them would be walking out of there. Stuntmen on the set of The Green Hornet complained that Bruce was injuring them, and he refused to pull his punches because it wouldn't look realistic. This led to his first interaction with Gene LaBelle and what seems to be the inspiration for the scene in Tarantino's movie. Gene suddenly picked up Lee and put him in a fireman's carry. I think this was a worst-case scenario for Bruce because he built himself up as this lethal killer, and here he was getting one-upped on set. Gene ran around the set with Bruce on his shoulder, screaming, "Put me down or I'll kill you." When Robin, on the show Batman, played by Burt Ward, was set to fight Bruce in a scene, Bruce intimidated him and made like he was going to fight him on set for real. This brings me to another one of the reasons people hated Tarantino's take on Bruce Lee. Some people are so awestruck by Bruce's physique, his skill, his seeming invincibility on screen, that they want to believe he was the most invincible beast of a fighter who ever lived. They'll say he was the greatest martial artist of all time with actual superpowers. Bruce loved to show off his physique and build up this cult of personality that continues today.
But now we have to face the music. Bruce Lee was obviously mortal, and honestly, I don't think any man is invincible.
I've suspended this disbelief for Benny the Jet Urquidez, because throughout his career as a full-contact fighter, he actually was undefeated, with 63 wins. That is, if you discount his one controversial loss. In the history of MMA, very few fighters have had more than 20 straight wins. Even the Spider, Anderson Silva, with his 7-year title reign and 16 consecutive victories against some really tough guys, finally lost in spectacular fashion.
So you're going to tell me Bruce could definitely destroy any one of those fighters I just mentioned?
He totally would have handled Benny the Jet like a child. He would have drop-kicked Anderson Silva out of the octagon. He would have destroyed UFC champ John Jones.
Now I know it's hard for some people to see Bruce Lee getting handled by Brad Pitt, but Tarantino's movie was meant to be pure fantasy, and I don't know about you, but I thought Brad Pitt was pretty badass in Troy. I mean, if you put a spear and a shield in Brad's hands and a spear and a shield in Bruce's hands, I have to say, my money's on Brad.
Not to take anything away from Bruce, he was a very good fighter with some innovative ideas for his time. Martial arts legend Joe Louis credits Lee for greatly improving his fighting style before he went on to win world titles in kickboxing and karate. I do think it's very likely Bruce would have had a winning record if he had competed in combat sports.
So was Bruce Lee arrogant? I tend to think so. But I don't mean that as a total character assassination of the guy. I mean, nowadays you'd think that was a positive trait, at least for fans of boxing and MMA. I've known a lot of guys in the world of martial arts with some pretty over-the-top egos, and some of them were pretty damn good fighters who I had a certain amount of respect for. Now, Shannon only knew her dad until she was 4 years old, so for her to say he wasn't egotistical at all reads to me like she's defending this idealized version of her dad, which is understandable. But the scene in Tarantino's movie was meant to be this unexpected, funny twist, so I personally don't think it did any damage to Bruce Lee's image.